Oh, hello everybody. I am just getting a book out of the box because there's so many of them. It's quite difficult sometimes. So we're going to have whichever one it's going to be. So I'm going to have a look in a minute for our next story. Let's have a look, shall we? It'll be one of the Mr. Man stories. Oh, now I wonder if somebody else did this. This might already be on the site because I think possibly Miss Sambles might have done this, but we'll do it anyway because it might be a different Mr Tickle. So we can have a go at it, see if maybe I do it differently. Who knows? Because when people read stories, everybody reads them differently, don't they? Some people use different voices and put different emphasis on different sections. So who knows how it will come out. Now, of course, if it is Mr. Tickle that has already been read, you will know what he looks like and what colour he is. So can you remember? Can you remember what colour he is? I'm just trying to think. I think probably I would describe him as a sort of mustard colour, sort of orangey, yellowy sort of colour. He has a hat. Like a lot of the Mr. Men characters, he has a hat which is blue. Well done if you've remembered. And of course, most important of all, being Mr. Tickle, he has extraordinary long arms. All the better for tickling you with. A bit like the little bit like Red Riding Hood and the Wolf, isn't it? With his teeth and his big eyes and his big teeth. All the better for eating you with. Well, Mr. Tickle, I think, is a bit of a tickler. So shall we see how he lives his life and what happens to him? So it was a warm, sunny morning, and in his small house at the other side of the wood, Mr. Tickle was asleep. You didn't know there was such a thing as a tickle, did you? Well, there is. Tickles are small and round, and they have arms that stretch and stretch and stretch extraordinarily. So like my arms go out there, don't they? And they go out and they get longer and longer and longer and longer. And you could probably do that with your arms as well. And then they become, in fact, if you measure from one fingertip to the other fingertips, that's probably how tall you are. So my arms means that I can reach almost 6 feet from one side to the other. Anyway, Mr. Tickle, probably a lot more than that because you can see, as we say, he's quite little in the middle, but he's got very long arms. Anyway, Mr. Tickle, there he is, in his bed. He was fast asleep. He was having a dream. Must be a very funny dream because it made him laugh out loud, and that woke him up. Sometimes you do that when you snore. Well, maybe obviously you don't snore, but when I'm snoring, sometimes that wakes me up. He sat up in bed, stretched his extraordinary long arms, and yawned an enormous yawn. Now, Mr. Tickle felt hungry. So do you know what he did? When he got arms that long, he reached out one of his extraordinarily long arms, opened the bedroom door, reached down the stairs, opened the kitchen door, walked along the worktop, up to the cupboard, opened the cupboard door, opened the biscuit tin, took out a biscuit, and then brought it back on the worktop, through the downstairs door, the kitchen door, up the stairs, back through the bedroom door, and sometimes it's quite useful having very long arms. Although, did you notice he didn't put the lid back on the biscuit tin or put the biscuits back, which is a bit naughty. Anyway, Mr. Tickle munched his biscuit. He looked out of the window. Today, he says, looks very much like a tickling day, he thought to himself. I think he's a bit naughty, isn't he? So late that morning, after Mr. Tickle had made his bed and cooked his breakfast, he set off through the wood. And as he walked along, he kept his eyes very wide open, looking for somebody to tickle. Looking for anybody to tickle. And eventually, Mr. Tickle came to a school. Ooh, there was nobody about. So, reaching up his extraordinarily long arms to a high window ledge, Mr. Tickle pulled himself up, and there he is, look, with his very long arms, and peeped in through the window. Now, if you looked in today, then he wouldn't see any children there, would he? But maybe when you're hearing this story, there will be children, who knows? Anyway, when this story is written, inside he could see a classroom. And there were children sitting at their desks and a teacher writing on the board. Oh dear. I can see next to the teacher's head, I can see an orangey mustardy coloured hand. Who do we think that is? I think we know. Mr Tickle waited a moment and he reached in through the window. Mr Tickle's extraordinarily long arm went right up to the teacher, paused, and then tickle, tickle, tickle. Well, as you can imagine, the teacher jumped in the air, turned round very quick to see who was there, but there was nobody there, because he can pull his arm back really quickly, can't he? Mr Tickle grinned a mischievous grin. Do you think the children thought it was funny? I'll bet they did. He waited another minute, and then he tickled the teacher again. This time he kept on tickling until soon the teacher was laughing out loud. Stop it! Stop it! Over and over again. Because tickling is so funny, isn't it? All the children were laughing too at such a funny sight, and there was terrible pandemonium. Anyway, eventually Mr Tickle thought that he had had enough fun, so he gave the teacher one more tickle for luck, and then very quietly brought his arm back through the open window. Chuckling to himself, he jumped down from the window, leaving the poor teacher to explain to the children what it was all about and what was going on. Only he couldn't, because he didn't know. Then Mr Tickle went to town. Oh dear. And what a day Mr Tickle had. He tickled Mr Policeman, who was on traffic duty in the middle of the road. That would cause chaos because all the cars would go the wrong way, wouldn't they? In fact, it caused an enormous traffic jam. Oh no, he tickled the greengrocer just as he was piling all the apples up neatly in the window. And what happened? Well, he got so excited and wriggled about so much, he knocked all the apples over and fell into the middle of the heap. At the railway station, the guard was about to wave his flag for the train to leave. As he lifted his arm in the air, Mr Tickle tickled him. There you can see his arm creeping round behind. And every time he tried to wave his flag, Mr Tickle tickled him until the train was 10 minutes leaving the station and all the passengers were furious. That day, Mr Tickle tickled everybody. There was a man who used to make me laugh, and he would say, it was a tickle-hilarious day. He had a tickle-hilarious day, missus. He tickled the doctor. He tickled the butcher. He even tickled old Mr Stamp, the postman, who dropped all his letters into a puddle. That is not good, because you don't want your letters arriving all muddy, or your birthday cards, for example. That wouldn't be good. Then Mr Tickle went home, and sitting in his armchair in his small house at the other side of the wood, he laughed and laughed every time he thought about all the people he had tickled. So, if you are in any way ticklish, beware of Mr Tickle and those extraordinary long arms of his. Sometimes we have to be careful of mummies and daddies, don't we? Because they tend to have very long arms. When they start tickling you, just think, perhaps he's somewhere about at this very moment, just when you're hearing the story. Perhaps that extraordinary long arm of his is already creeping up the door of his room. Perhaps it's opening the door right now and coming in. Perhaps before we knew what is happening, you will be well and truly tickled. It's a good story, isn't it? So if you've heard that before, if already recorded, if it's the story that Miss Sambles did, I'm going to have to check it now because I'd forgotten. If it's a story she did as well, you've got two stories, the story's the same, but it's told differently. And when we tell stories, we all tell them differently. So when you're telling a story, you can tell it your own way, with your own voices. And you can add things, can't you? You can make extra things happen. So I mentioned the man who goes, it's tickle-hilarious it is. He was a very famous comedian called Ken Dodd, who's, I think he's died now because he was really very old. But he made a lot of jokes like that. And tickling people with his tickling stick was something he found very funny. So putting that into the story was an extra bit, wasn't it? So you can always add bits to stories. You can always put your own voices on, because maybe sometimes the tickling man might be going, oh, that's very ticklish, very ticklish. Or it might be a ticklish, oh, I'm so tickled to see you all. And you can use whatever voices you want when you tell a story. I hope you enjoyed that. Be happy, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye now.